In this lecture, we're going to look at the bid price, ask price, mark price. I'll also show you all these expiry series and we'll talk about them a little bit. And then we'll also look at what is volume and open interest, because that's a very critical aspect in options trading. So let's just take a look at this option chain here. We're looking at Apple, and we know that there are weekly series that expire every week. So now we used to have weeklies only for the week that was coming up. So basically, we had weeklies only for the next 7 days. But off late, now you have weeklies for every other week as well. So even though the next March series is 27 days away, you can see that we have 3 weekly series before that. The immediate one is called a weekly, and then the nicknames for the other weeklies that is not the immediate one is called a shorty. So I don't know if this is a formal name or it's just a nickname. I believe it's just a nickname. These two, for example, so the one that has 13 days to expiry and 20 days to expiry, those would be called shorties. Then whenever you see an option series that is white in color, that's your regular monthly series. So the weekly series expire at the close of market hours every Friday evening. That is fixed, that doesn't change. Every Friday evening, you're going to see one set of weekly options expire. The monthly options expire on the third Friday of every month. So it's fixed again, but the dates are going to differ because it happens to be the third Friday of every month. Now, we also have quarterly series in some options. In Apple, we don't seem to have it, but let me check the spiders. I'm pretty sure we have quarterlies on the spiders. There we go. So you can see a quarterly series as well. Now, what this means, this is a March quarterly. So this option would expire on the last day of March, and this option would expire on the last day of June. This would expire on the last day of September, and this one on the last day of December. So it provides traders with another set of expiry series, which obviously adds to the flexibility of your option strategies. So you have weeklies, you have quarterlies, you have monthlies, and you also have leap options. So here you can see leaps are long-term options, and they're not called anything on the platform, but anything over a year is generally referred to as a leap option. So here you have March 2014, Jan 2015, and you even have something for December 2015. So that is 3 years away almost. And so on all these big indexes, you'll see that you have options that go very, very far. There are ways to play the leaps. It's more complicated, and we'll probably cover how you can use leap strategies in a later advanced course. So that's as far as expiries are concerned. Next, what I want to do is talk about the bid and ask prices. So let's come to our Apple, and this is our option chain for Apple for the March series, which has 27 days to expiry. Now, you can see that you always have a bid and an ask price. So this is your standard negotiation. If you've ever bought and sold stocks, you know exactly what this is. The buyer wants to buy the bid price is the buyer's price. So that's the way you can remember. B is buyer. The bid price is a buyer's price. So the buyer is willing to pay a maximum of $13.50, let's say, for this option. And the seller is willing to sell it at no less than $13.75. So this is the bid and ask spread. Now, most of the time, like we discussed earlier, this bid and ask spread is set by the market maker. So the market maker will buy at $13.50 and he'll sell it at $13.75. So you can see that he makes an immediate profit there. But that's one of the perks given to market makers, because they fulfill the role of providing liquidity in the marketplace. So there's a couple of ways market makers make money. I don't want to confuse things with that, but in the bid ask price, it's pretty clear. They buy at the bid and they'll sell at the ask. And so they have a clear advantage right there. And many times you'll see the bid ask spread become really wide. And if it becomes really wide, then you're getting in at a disadvantage. So for example, let's say, this option has a 25-cent bid and ask spread. Now, of course, bear in mind, we are looking at these prices after hours. So after hours, these bid-ask spreads are automatically expanded. During regular trading hours, Apple trades with about most of the time for at-the-money options, you can get a bid-ask spread of about 5 cents, which is great. I mean, for a price of a stock that is around 460 or 480, Apple's gone up to even 700. If you can get a bid-ask spread of about 5 cents, that's great. But many times you'll find that it's more like 10 cents, which is also okay. But 25 cents, in my opinion, is a little high. And the only reason why it's showing 25 cents right now is because it's after hours and these prices have expanded, and which is a usual phenomenon. You'll always see bid-ask prices expanding when the market is not open. That's as far as the bid-ask price is concerned. If you wanted to know if you wanted to set a limit price, for example, what you could do is put the mark column here. The mark column gives you the midpoint between these two. So you don't have to sit there and calculate what is the midpoint. So the mark price is a convenient way of looking at any option and determining what is the fair value, at least the midpoint between these two. So if you wanted to buy this option and you didn't have too much time to think about it, you can certainly put a buy order at the mark price. So that is quite helpful when it comes to just looking at the prices and determining a price to get into the option. So that's as far as the bid, ask, and the mark prices are concerned. I want to talk about volume and open interest, because this is something that's very important when it comes to options. Volume is pretty straightforward. Volume is the number of contracts that got traded on that particular day. So today is a Saturday, so the market is closed, but the volume that you see here obviously represents yesterday's volume. So in this Apple contract, at this strike price, we had 1,397 contracts. We had 2,589 contracts here. We had 3,004 contracts here. And if you see on the put side as well, you have some pretty heavy contracts. You can see that the 460 put had 6,000 contracts. The 450 put had 19,000 contracts. So whenever you see some heavy volume at a strike price like that, it should tell you that some of the big players are thinking bearish on Apple. So look at this, we are looking at the open interest, which is what we need to do, but I didn't want to get to the open interest right away. We're looking at the volume. Okay, so the volume is normal. Here you have 4,000, 2,000, and here also you have 2,000, 3,000, things like that. But my next point was anyway going to be the open interest. And first, let's discuss what is open interest. For any given day, the volume represents the volume for that day. However, for this series, which expires in 27 days, you want to know how many contracts have been opened for these options, because that gives you a very clear idea of whether your option is going to be a very liquid option or not. If you wanted to buy the 450 put, for example, you were bearish on Apple and you wanted to buy the 450 put. And if you saw an open interest of 19,000 at that level, then you're going to be comforted by the fact that there is plenty of liquidity in that option. Because remember, all options have to be closed out on the date of expiry. So if you get into an option that has very low liquidity, that has very low open interest, and open interest is a cumulative total of the volumes that have happened so far, and it actually represents the number of contracts that are still open, that have not been closed out. So if you bought a call option, then that is an open contract. If you bought a put option, that is an open contract. If somebody else bought sold a call option, that is that is also an open interest. All these contracts are cumulatively counted, and the open interest represents the number of contracts that are yet to be settled for that particular monthly series, for that particular expiry series. So whenever you have high levels of open interest, it's always a good sign, because you know that you're going to see a lot of liquidity. Now, in addition to that, what I was talking earlier is whenever you see a large number like this, this is certainly a large number, because you can see that everywhere it's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 1,000, things like that. But when you see a large number of open interest, 19,000, you know that big players are betting that Apple would go down in the next few days, because whenever you see large number of open interest, now there could be two ways to look at it, because open interest tells you the number of contracts that are open, but it doesn't tell you whether people bought that put option or whether people sold that put option. And that's very critical to know, because if people bought that put option, then they are bearish at that strike price. So they think Apple is going to go down to 450 at least. But if somebody sold that put option and the market maker bought it, then it tells you the opposite. That becomes somewhat a bullish strategy. So it's not clear as to whether you can know definitively whether the open interest represents a bearish sentiment or a bullish sentiment. And the way you can get a better picture, from these numbers is to look at the open interest of some of the other strike prices around it. And so if we see here, the calls, obviously, the open interest in the calls are much, much less than the puts. So you can see that the people that have bought or transacted in puts are much, much more than the calls. The highest in the call side is this 7,400, but the highest in the puts is 19,000. Then we have 8,000, 8,000, 6,000, and plenty of 4,000s. Whereas we don't see that kind of open interest on the call side. So by looking at the overall, all these strike prices, you can certainly make a decision or come to a decision that there is probably more bearish pressure on Apple right now, just because there are so many so many contracts in the open interest on the put side. And so that would be a fairly reasonable assessment to make. By looking at various open interest strike prices, then you say that you can decide that, okay, there is a bearish pressure on Apple. Therefore, if you wanted to take a position, you could potentially think of taking a bearish position. Because bear in mind, these are all large hedge funds. It's all smart money. I think you should look at my course called Smart Money, because Smart Money absolutely analyzes all this stuff. It's volume, because the only way you can determine how the big players are playing is by volume. Because if you just look at a price chart, it doesn't mean anything. You have to look at volume to really understand where the big money is playing their cards. So that's as far as volume and open interest is concerned. These are very important. You need to look at options that have good volume and have good open interest. As a general rule of thumb, if any option has an open interest of at least 1,000 contracts, then that is fairly decent liquidity. That's fairly decent volume. That's fairly decent liquidity. You generally won't have a problem getting out of your positions if there is at least 1,000 contracts in open interest. So that's as far as the option market structure is concerned. We've come to the end of this course. We saw what time decay was, we looked at implied volatility, and we've combined a lot of courses together. And now what we are going to do next is actual trading stuff. So we're going to go by call options, put options, things like that. So it's going to be very exciting from next course onwards. We're going to start with single option trades, and then we'll be moving into spreads. And then we have some pretty advanced strategies as well as broad market concepts. So there's a lot coming along, and these are all real cutting edge stuff that you can pick up, and hopefully you'll find a lot of value in this. If you have any questions, please email me info@optiontiger.com. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in the next module. Thank you.